When my parents vanished in Alaska, the lawyer read their will. My spoiled brother inherited a $1.2 million beachfront mansion. I got a rotting cabin, but hidden inside was a secret worth $500 million that would destroy my family forever. If you are watching this, kindly subscribe and let me know where you are watching from, and I hope that you're safe wherever you are. My name is Sarah Nanook. I was born in the bone-chilling wilderness of Fairbanks, Alaska, where survival wasn't a choice. It was the only way to live. Our wooden cabin perched on the edge of an endless forest, towering pines stood like silent guardians protecting ancient secrets. The house was small. One room served as kitchen and living room. My parents had the bedroom. I slept in a cramped attic corner, wrapped in worn blankets, listening to wind whistle through wooden cracks. Winter meant waking with numb fingers, despite burrowing deep into every blanket we owned. My father, Samuel Nanook, was a native Alaskan of Inuit descent, tall and sturdy with blade-sharp eyes and black hair tied at his neck. He worked as a hunting guide, then at a sawmill, then logging. The work was brutal, but he never complained. "The land is our mother," he'd say in his stone-steady voice. "Respect it, and it sustains you. Betray it, and it swallows you whole." My mother, Grace, was the opposite. Golden-haired with a smile warm as rare Alaskan sunlight. European-American descent, working part-time as an office clerk. She loved me. I knew from how she stroked my hair each night, how she slipped warm bread from the oven into my hands. But she always supported Father's strictness. "Your father wants what's best," she'd say when I grumbled about chopping firewood in sub-zero cold. We were poor. Not starving poor, but every penny counts poor. I followed Father into forests, carrying a tiny axe, chopping dry branches for firewood. Sometimes I waded into rivers so cold my feet turned to stone, catching salmon for dinner. Once I secretly scavenged scrap metal from the dump, selling it so Mother could buy salt and sugar. Back then I didn't think it was hardship. It was just life. How Mother Alaska forced us to live. Father taught me everything about survival. By age 4, I could start fires with flint and dry twigs. By 6, I built shelters strong enough to withstand blizzards. By 8, I could track moose through woods, though I was never strong enough to hunt alone. Father didn't just teach skills, he taught thinking. "Never take more than the land allows," he said when we fished. "Take only what you need to live. Leave the rest for tomorrow." My childhood was shaped by harsh days when Alaska's cold seeped into every breath. I didn't have fancy toys or extravagant trips. Instead, I had boundless forest, icy rivers, and nights by the fire, listening to Father's stories about Inuit ancestors, wind spirits, and Mother Earth's mysteries. Those years forged me into a girl who grew up fast, quiet, and reserved. At school, kids called me Forest Girl because of Father's worn jacket, my calloused hands from wielding axes, and my refusal to join their noisy games. I didn't care. I knew I was different. While other kids dreamed of cars and color TVs, I dreamed of journeys deep into forests where only I could hear the whispers of land and sky. Harsh as it was, that childhood gave me quiet pride and unyielding will, enough to face any challenge nature or life could throw at me. But I never imagined the greatest challenge wouldn't come from Alaska's biting cold or long forest nights. It would come from my own family, from my younger brother Marcus, from the changes that sudden wealth brought to our once humble home. When I was 9, everything changed overnight, as if Mother Alaska had suddenly smiled upon us. Father caught the attention of a large mining company. They needed someone who knew every hill and stream in this land. Father, with razor-sharp eyes and terrain memory like a living map, was perfect. The new job brought a salary we'd only dreamed of before, enough to pay off debts, enough for Mother to stop counting pennies when buying groceries. For the first time, our family escaped poverty's shadow. We left Fairbanks, abandoning the old cabin where I'd huddled in the attic, and moved to Anchorage, Alaska's largest city. Our new home had a proper fireplace, clear windows, and no gaps for wind to sneak through. Mother quit her part-time job to open a small diner. Grace's kitchen had a wooden sign, and mouth-watering aroma of fresh bread wafting through the neighborhood. Customers flocked in, locals and long-haul truck drivers. Mother smiled more, eyes lighting up every time the cash register brimmed. That same year Marcus was born, my younger brother, golden hair like Mother's, big sparkling eyes like summer lakes. Marcus came into the world when our family no longer worried about food or clothing. He grew up in warmth with a room full of toys I'd never dared dream of at his age. I remember pushing Marcus's stroller around the neighborhood, watching him giggle as mother handed him brand new stuffed bears. I wasn't jealous, truly. Marcus was my little brother and I loved him. I liked being the big sister, teaching him to tie shoes, showing him how to read clouds to predict rain. But as Marcus grew, I noticed differences, not just between us as siblings, but between the worlds we were raised in. I grew up in bone-chilling cold, chopping firewood until hands went numb, absorbing father's harsh survival lessons. I learned about preserving nature, watching him look at me as if entrusting me with our Inuit ancestors' legacy. Marcus never knew cold nights without firewood, never waded into rivers to catch fish, never heard father's stories about Mother Earth. Our parents, busy with new jobs, didn't have time to teach Marcus the lessons they'd ingrained in me. Instead, they compensated with material things. Marcus had new shoes every season, a shiny bicycle, even a small TV in his room for cartoons. Whenever Marcus wanted something, Mother would smile and nod. Father, though still stern, couldn't bring himself to say no. He's still young, let him enjoy himself, Mother would say when I asked why Marcus didn't do chores like I did at his age. Marcus didn't just grow up in abundance. He grew up believing everything in life came easily. At school, he was the center of attention with expensive clothes and confident talking, as if the world revolved around him. Kids didn't call Marcus Forest Girl. They called him the Prince of Anchorage. And Marcus loved it. He loved praise, loved showing off new watches or shiny shoes. Sometimes when I looked at him, he felt like a stranger. But here's what I want to ask you. Have you ever watched someone you love become someone you don't recognize because of money? I didn't blame our parents. They only wanted to give Marcus what I never had. But I slowly realized their indulgence had planted a dangerous seed in my brother's heart. Marcus didn't value what he had. He took everything for granted. Money, clothes, even our parents' love. Once I saw him toss aside a brand new jacket because it had a small scratch. Mom will buy me another. He shrugged, as if it were only natural. I looked at him, wanting to say something, but stayed silent. I remembered how Father taught me to mend clothes with needle and thread, how he told me a person must cherish what they have, no matter how small. The differences between us became pronounced as I entered teenage years. I still woke early to help Father fix fences or shovel snow. Marcus slept until noon, then ran off with friends, laughing loudly. I still loved forest trips where I could hear wind whispers and feel Mother Earth beneath my feet. Marcus loved city lights, noisy bars, parties where he could show off. I lived by Father's ways: discipline, patience, respect for nature. Marcus lived as if the world existed only to serve him. Once I tried talking to him. Marcus, I began, as we sat in the kitchen while Mother baked. Have you ever thought about learning to fish or set up camp like Dad taught me? Marcus looked at me and smirked. Why bother with that stuff, sis? Mom and Dad have money now. We don't need to live like forest people anymore. I didn't respond. His words cut like a knife, not because they hurt me, but because I realized Marcus didn't understand, and perhaps never would. In those years I felt invisible distance growing between Marcus and me. I still loved him, still saw him as my little brother, but I couldn't ignore that we were walking different paths. I was a woman of the forest, of Mother Earth, of harsh but honest lessons. Marcus was a man of city lights, of glamour, of things that came too easily. I thought despite our differences, we were still family, that we could still hold hands through those years. But then Emma entered my life, and with her I learned that love could be a flame warming the heart, but also a storm burning away every shred of trust. I met Emma one summer afternoon in Anchorage when rare sunlight melted ice on the streets. I was in Mother's diner, helping clean tables after lunch rush. The smell of fresh bread and coffee lingered in the air, mingling with chatter and laughter of regular customers. I looked up and saw her. Emma, gently curled brown hair, eyes blue as glacial lakes, and a smile that seemed to light up the entire room. She wore a thin sweater, held a book, and walked into the diner as if she'd always belonged there. "A black coffee and a slice of toast, please," she said, her voice soft but confident, as if she knew exactly what she wanted. I wasn't the type to be easily smitten, Life in Fairbanks had taught me to keep my heart guarded, like I kept fires alive on freezing nights. But there was something about Emma I couldn't look away from. Maybe it was how she sat reading her book, quiet but fully absorbed, as if the world had shrunk to pages in front of her. Maybe it was how she smiled at Mother, calling her Aunt Grace with natural warmth. Or maybe it was simply that she felt different from girls I'd met who only cared about parties or new dresses. I mustered courage to strike up conversation. "Good book?" I asked, wiping a table but keeping my eyes on her. Emma looked up, slightly surprised, then smiled. "Pretty good," she replied, holding up the book, a collection of poems by Robert Frost. "Do you like poetry?" I shook my head, embarrassed. "I'm not much for poetry, but I love the forest and things he writes about. The wind, smell of earth, shadows of trees. Those are things I see every day." She looked at me, eyes sparkling with curiosity. "A forest girl, huh?" she teased, tone playful but kind. I laughed, feeling lighter for the first time that day. "You could say that." From then on we started talking. Emma was the daughter of a middle-class Anchorage family, not overly wealthy, but comfortable enough for her to grow up with things I never had: summer vacations in California, piano lessons, beautiful dresses. But she didn't brag. She spoke of her dream to become a journalist, to travel the world and write about forgotten people and places. "I want to tell stories of people like you," she said once, as we sat by the river, watching water shimmer under sunset. "People who live true to themselves, not chasing false glamour." I was drawn to Emma, not just because she was beautiful, but because she seemed to understand me. She didn't laugh when I talked about chopping firewood in Fairbanks, about how Father taught me to start fires or track deer. She listened, eyes lighting up as if living in my stories. When I spoke of Mother Earth, of lessons Father passed down, she took my hand gently but firmly. "You're different, Sarah," she said. "You're not like those guys who only brag about cars or money. You have real strength." Her words made my heart race, as if for the first time, someone saw the real me. We fell in love. Those days felt like my life had been lit up. I took Emma into forests, showed her how to pitch tents, how to spot animal tracks. She laughed loudly when she tried starting her first fire, and sent smoke billowing everywhere. I taught her to listen to wind, to feel Mother Earth's pulse. In return, she taught me to open up, to talk about things I'd always kept hidden. I told her about my harsh childhood, about nights by the fire listening to Father's stories, about quiet pride of surviving Alaska's cold. She hugged me, whispering, "You're stronger than anyone I've ever met." But as our love deepened, I began noticing changes in Emma. She grew more ambitious, craving more than what Anchorage could offer. She dreamed of big cities, prestigious newsrooms, luxurious apartments in New York or Los Angeles. At first I thought her ambition was strength, fire like my own resilience. But slowly, I saw her start to compare, and painfully, the person she compared me to was Marcus. Marcus, now in his 20s, was the epitome of what Anchorage called success. He drove a sleek sports car, wore tailored suits with glittering watches, and lived in a beachfront apartment our parents had bought him, a place with a balcony overlooking the ocean where he threw extravagant parties. His friends were the elite. Young businessmen, with confident smiles, beautiful women in elegant outfits, conversations filled with laughter and clinking glasses. For Marcus, life was a stage, and he always wanted to be the star. Emma began seeing me differently. She used to call me different, but gradually her gaze would drift when I spoke of forest, Mother Earth, or values Father had instilled in me. She started looking at Marcus, my spoiled younger brother, with admiration she'd never shown me. She was drawn to his glamour. One ordinary afternoon, as we walked along Anchorage's coastal road, I saw Marcus standing by his car, laughing loudly with friends. Emma stopped, looked at him, then turned to me. "You see your brother," she said, voice tinged with admiration. I didn't want to hear. "He knows how to live. He knows how to make people notice." Her words were like a small sharp knife, not enough to draw blood immediately, but enough to sting. I tried keeping my voice steady as I did when facing cold forest winds. "Marcus has always been like that. He has his way of living. I have mine." But Emma didn't stop there. In days that followed, she said things that pierced my heart. "Why do you live so small, Sarah?" she asked once, as we sat in Mother's diner, eyes looking at me like I was a puzzle she couldn't solve. You don't know how to enjoy life. You don't show off. Don't you see Marcus? He lives big, lives truly. I stayed silent, hand tightening around my coffee mug, but I didn't speak. I just looked at her, seeing her eyes grow distant, as if I were no longer the woman she loved. Emma began criticizing me, not with blunt words, but with subtle remarks and disappointed sighs. You lack ambition, she said once, as we sat by the river. You could do so much more. Why don't you want to be like Marcus, with money, status, everything that makes people respect you? I wanted to shout that I didn't need anyone's respect, that I didn't want to be Marcus, that my worth wasn't in cars or beachfront apartments, but I only stared at water, feeling a block of ice slowly pressing down on my heart. To Emma, living big meant having wealth to flaunt, spending lavishly, commanding attention in society. She wanted spotlight, to stand beside someone who made the world turn and look. And I, with my old jacket, my rough hands from wielding axes, my dreams of forest and Mother Earth, couldn't give her that. I began feeling cracks forming, and those cracks grew wider each day. Deep down, I knew they couldn't be mended. Emma wasn't just comparing me to Marcus. She was being drawn into his world, a world of lights and glamour. She no longer saw me as a woman of strength, but as someone lacking ambition, someone living small, while my brother lived large. I tried holding on to her, tried reminding myself that our love was worth fighting for. But I never expected that before I could even try salvaging that love, a greater storm would crash into my life, sweeping away everything I once thought was certain. My parents went missing, leaving behind a void colder than any winter I'd ever endured in Fairbanks. I was 25 when devastating news arrived. It was an early winter morning with snow lightly falling on Anchorage streets, blanketing rooftops and sidewalks in thin layers. I was at Mother's diner, helping clean up after busy morning rush. The phone rang. A stranger's voice came through, dry and emotionless. Are you Sarah Nanak? I'm an officer with Seattle Police. I'm very sorry to inform you that your parents, Samuel and Grace Nanak, have gone missing after a plane crash. The world seemed to stop. I stood there, still holding the rag I'd been using to wipe tables. All sounds around me, chatter of customers, clanging of pots in the kitchen, faded into blur. The officer continued, voice steady, like he was reading a report. The small plane carrying your parents encountered trouble while flying over icy mountains near the Canadian border. Some wreckage has been found scattered across the mountainside, but there's no sign of bodies or survivors. We're continuing the search, he added, but his tone carried no hope. I hung up, feeling as if an icy weight was crushing my chest. I didn't cry, not because I was strong, but because I didn't know what to do with the pain. It was too vast, too cold, too real. I called Marcus right after. He was at a bar. I could hear loud music and laughter in the background. What did you say? He asked, voice distracted, as if I were telling some unimportant story. When I repeated the news, he went quiet for a moment, then said, yeah, okay, you handle it. I'm busy. He hung up, leaving me with the cold beep of disconnected line. Days that followed were a foggy nightmare. Local media began covering the crash. Alaska couple missing in plane crash screamed sensational headlines in Anchorage newspapers. People in the community came to the diner to express condolences. They hugged me, offered words of comfort, but I felt only emptiness. Emma stayed by my side, at least at first. She held my hand, whispering that she'd always be there, that we'd get through this together. But her eyes were distant, no longer warm like they used to be. While I drowned in grief, Marcus acted strangely. He showed up at the diner, a few days later, dressed impeccably, as always, in a new leather jacket and polished shoes. How's it going, sis? He asked, voice light but insincere. I looked at him and saw a stranger, someone seemingly untouched by the pain I was carrying. Aren't you sad? I asked, voice hoarse. Marcus shrugged, flashing an enigmatic smile. Sure, I'm sad, but life goes on, you know. Mom and Dad would want that. I didn't respond. I couldn't fathom how he could be so calm. But then I overheard him talking to a friend on the phone right there in the diner, voice brimming with excitement. Yeah, the will's probably going to be read soon. Hopefully there's something worthwhile, right? I stood there, hand gripping the edge of the table, feeling cold wind blow through my heart. Marcus wasn't just calm, he was thinking about inheritance, about what our parents might have left behind, while I still couldn't accept they were gone. Few weeks later, the court declared my parents deceased based on plain wreckage and absence of any signs of survivors. Death certificates were issued, cold and official, like final punctuation marks on all hope. The Anchorage community began expressing grief. They brought loaves of bread, salmon soup, carefully woven wreaths of golden wildflowers to our house. The next day, a small memorial was held by the river where Father used to fish. People lit candles in cold Alaskan wind, sharing memories, how Father had helped them repair boats, how Mother baked bread to share with the neighborhood every winter. I stood listening silently, realizing my parents didn't just belong to me, they were part of this community. But when the last candle flickered out and everyone left, I was alone again with a void nothing could fill. Then on a gloomy afternoon, when Anchorage sky was heavy with clouds, as if it too carried my sorrow, the phone rang. A polite but cold voice came through. "Sarah Nanak, this is Attorney Wilson. I need you and your brother Marcus to come to my office tomorrow morning for the reading of your parents' will." I called Marcus. "The will," he said, voice brimming with excitement that made me shudder. "Great, sis. Finally, something worth looking forward to. See you tomorrow." He hung up, leaving me with gnawing unease. The next morning, I arrived at Attorney Wilson's office, a small but elegant building in downtown Anchorage, with glass walls and polished brass sign. Marcus showed up late, striding and wearing a sleek black suit, hair perfectly styled, confident smile, as if he already knew what was coming. "Hey sis," he said, clapping me on the shoulder like we were close friends, not siblings facing a moment that could change our lives. The lawyer's meeting room was small but stifling, with a long wooden table and leather-upholstered chairs. Attorney Wilson, a middle-aged man with silver hair and gold-rimmed glasses, sat at the head of the table, thick stack of documents in front of him. He looked at us, expression stern but neutral. "Sarah Marcus," he began, voice steady like a proclamation. "Today we will read the will of Samuel Nanak and Grace Nanak. I offer my condolences for your loss, but as per your parents' wishes, I will now read what they have left behind." I sat there, heart pounding, not because I expected anything, but because I felt like I was reopening a wound that hadn't healed. Marcus, on the other hand, sat upright, eyes gleaming, as if the lawyer were about to hand him a golden key. Wilson opened the file, flipped a few pages, and began reading. His first words hit the room like a cold gust of wind. "To our youngest child, Marcus Nanak, we leave the beachfront mansion in Miami, valued at over $1.2 million, along with liquid assets, including cash, stocks, and several bank accounts." The room seemed to hold its breath. Marcus let out a small triumphant laugh, unable to hide his satisfaction. Wilson continued, voice still calm. "To our eldest daughter, Sarah Nanak, we leave the wooden cabin in the remote forest near Fairbanks, Alaska, where our family lived in our youth." He paused, looking at me as if expecting a reaction. I said nothing. I couldn't say anything. The cabin, the place where I'd huddled in the attic, where Father taught me to start fires, where Mother sang me lullabies on freezing nights, it was now just a dilapidated legacy, something no one wanted, something no one cared about. I felt as if my parents had disowned me, as if all my efforts, my discipline, the lessons I'd learned from them were meaningless. Marcus looked at me, smile now wider, dripping with smugness. "Well sis," he said, tone mocking, "that cabin's perfect for you, forest girl, right?" That evening, I returned to my small apartment, carrying heavy pain. Emma was waiting for me, sitting on the sofa, but her eyes no longer held warmth they once did. "So how'd it go?" she asked, voice cold, as if she'd already guessed the outcome. I recounted everything, each word like a knife. I drove into my own heart. When I mentioned the cabin, she laughed, not a joyful laugh, but bitter, almost scornful. "A rotting wooden cabin," she said, standing up, hands on hips. "That's all you got, Sarah. Are you serious? Marcus gets $1 million mansion, and you get a pile of broken wood." I tried to explain, tried to say I didn't care about money, but Emma wouldn't listen. She paced the room, voice rising. "Don't you see? Marcus knows how to live, how to win, and you cling to that small life, holding on to your forest, your Mother Earth nonsense. But where has it gotten you? A crumbling cabin. She stopped, staring straight at me, eyes flashing with disappointment. You're a loser, Sarah. You'll never measure up to your brother. Her words were like a blizzard sweeping away the last of my hope. I stood there silent, watching as Emma slammed the engagement ring on the table, the ring I'd saved up for a year to buy. I can't live like this, she said, voice trembling, but resolute. I need someone who lives big, who does something with their life, not someone who just holds an axe and dreams of forests. She turned and walked out of the apartment, leaving me with the sound of the door slamming shut. Just a few days after our fight, Emma went public with her new relationship. With Marcus, my younger brother, with his $1 million mansion and triumphant smile, had become the person she chose. I sat in my empty apartment, clutching the ring she'd left behind, feeling as if everything I'd believed in, love, family, loyalty, had melted away like snow under the sun. I'd lost my parents, I'd lost Emma, and now I felt like I'd lost myself. But little did I know, hidden in that worthless cabin, was a secret that would change everything. In the days after Emma left, I lived like someone trapped in a blizzard, unable to see the path ahead, hearing nothing but howling wind in my mind. I avoided Marcus, avoided Mother's Diner, which had once been my only solace. Every street corner in Anchorage felt like a reminder of betrayal. Emma's smile, as she stood beside Marcus, his triumphant look, when he learned he'd inherited the $1 million mansion. I couldn't stay in the city any longer. Couldn't face the pitying glances of neighbors or whispers behind my back. I needed a place to breathe, a place to rediscover myself. I decided to head to the log cabin in Fairbanks, the legacy my parents left me. Though in everyone else's eyes, it was just a pile of rotting wood. The journey to Fairbanks was long and cold, like a trip back to my childhood. I drove Father's old beat-up truck through snow-covered roads, flanked by endless stretches of pine forests. Every tree, every hill stirred memories. The land is our mother, Father used to say, voice steady as stone. You have to listen, respect it, and the land will answer. I wondered if Mother Earth was answering me now, or merely punishing me. The cabin came into view, as I turned onto a rough dirt road. It was smaller than I remembered, roof sagging, wooden walls grayed by years of rain and snow. Windows were caked with dust, some planks had rotted, and the chimney looked like it could collapse any moment. I pushed the door open, and hinges screeched like a lament. Inside, air was cold and damp, smelling of rotting wood mixed with earth. Faint light filtered through windows, illuminating the cracked wooden floor. I saw the attic corner where I used to sleep, the fireplace Mother once tended, the small table where Father had carved my name into a piece of wood. Everything was as it had been, but now it felt empty, like a house without a soul. I sat on the floor, back against the wall, letting pain wash over me. I thought about the will, about how my parents chose Marcus over me, about how Emma chose him over me. I started cleaning the cabin. I swept away dust, cleared broken bits of wood, wiped down the fireplace. While trying to fix a loose floorboard, I noticed it made a strange hollow sound, as if there was a void beneath it. Curiosity got the better of me, and I used Father's knife to pry the board up. A small wooden compartment appeared, hidden deep under the floor, like a secret kept for years. Inside was an old metal box, rusted at the edges but still sturdy. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a carefully folded map, paper yellowed but still legible. The lines were drawn in black ink, accompanied by symbols in an Alaskan native language, characters Father had taught me when I was young. I spread the map out on the floor, faint light from the window, illuminating winding lines that led deep into the forest. Some areas were marked with small triangles, symbolizing mineral deposits. Others had black droplets, indicating oil. Layered lines represented valuable timber forests. In the corner of the map, in Father's handwriting, was a note: "True value lies not in what you take, but in what you keep." I read it over and over, and for a moment it was as if I could hear his voice in my ear. I leaned closer, tracing each line, heart pounding, as I began grasping the meaning. The marked lands, if the notes were accurate, held resources worth hundreds of millions of dollars, a treasure beyond anything I'd ever dared dream of. But here's what I want to ask you. If you discovered something worth $500 million that could prove everyone wrong about you, would you be able to keep it secret? I sat silently in the rotting cabin, clutching the map, feeling as though my entire life hung in the balance. Part of me screamed to run outside, to shout to the world that I wasn't a failure, not the wilderness fool Emma had mocked, that I held a fortune that could make me richer than Marcus, richer than anyone. But another part, the part Father had patiently shaped, whispered a reminder: not everything that can be taken should be taken. The land is our mother, and she must be preserved, not stripped bare. My heart began tearing itself apart. I didn't yet know what to do with the map, so I decided to bring it back to my apartment in Anchorage, hiding it in a locked drawer. Every night, I took the map out and stared at it as if it could tell me what I should do. I imagined selling the information about those lands, getting revenge on Marcus by proving I was wealthier than him. I pictured Emma coming back, eyes sparkling when she saw I was no longer the small-time woman. But then I remembered Father, who taught me that Mother Earth is sacred, that taking too much is betrayal. I remembered Mother, who once said, "Happiness lies not in money, but in how we live." I decided to keep the secret, to neither exploit nor sell it. I wanted to honor my parents' legacy, even if it meant I remained just Sarah Nanook, the woman of the woods, nothing more. But Mother Earth, as Father once said, always has ways of testing us. A month after my parents' disappearance, I decided to hold a small gathering to honor them, the people who raised me and Marcus, who left me with lessons that could never fade. I wanted a quiet space where family and friends could share memories of my parents, where I could feel them again, even if only through stories and smiles. I chose Mother's Diner as the venue because it was where she poured her heart, where the smell of fresh baked bread and coffee still lingered like a piece of her soul. I stood in the diner, arranging chairs in a circle, placing a photo of my parents on the table, Father with his stern smile, Mother with her gentle eyes. Familiar faces arrived gradually, bringing flowers and condolences. Aunt Linda, Mother's cousin, hugged me tightly, tears streaming down her cheeks. Old Pete, who used to hunt with Father, patted my shoulder with quiet sympathy. I stayed silent, forcing a smile, but inside I felt only emptiness. Marcus arrived late, as usual. He walked in with Emma at his side. Seeing her, my heart felt like it was being crushed. She held Marcus's hand, smiling lightly as he whispered something in her ear. I turned away, focusing on arranging coffee cups for guests, but that image clung to me like salt rubbed into a wound. The memorial began. People took turns sharing memories of my parents. Aunt Linda spoke of the time Mother taught her to bake bread, voice choking with emotion. Pete recounted hunting trips with Father, laughing loudly as he recalled how Father teased him for being terrible at fishing. I spoke too, though my voice trembled. I talked about nights by the fire, listening to Father speak of Mother Earth, how he taught me that true value lies not in money, but in integrity. But when it was Marcus's turn, he stood briefly, saying only a few words. Mom and Dad were amazing people. They worked hard to give us a better life. I'll always be grateful. He sat down, and Emma clapped, eyes full of pride. I looked at him, searching for a hint of sincerity in his voice, but found only shallowness. After the sharing, people began to chat and eat, and the atmosphere grew lighter. I stood in a corner of the room, watching everyone, trying to blend in but feeling out of place. Then Marcus and Emma approached, each holding a glass of wine. "Well, big sister," Marcus said, tone mocking, "this memorial's not half bad, but you know Mom and Dad would probably be prouder if you did something bigger than this little diner." Emma giggled, eyes sliding over me, cold and distant. "Yeah," she added, voice sweet but sharp as a knife. Their words ignited a fire inside me. I'd had enough. Enough of Marcus's taunts, Emma's scornful looks, the constant feeling of being belittled. I shot to my feet, voice trembling with rage. "You think I'm nothing, don't you?" I was nearly losing control, and the room fell silent. "You think I'm just a failure with a rotting cabin? Well, I have something neither of you will ever have." I paused, heart pounding, knowing I was going too far, but unable to stop. I found a map in the cabin, a map pointing to mineral deposits, oil precious timber worth over $500 million. "You hear me, $500 million. The crowded room went deathly quiet, the air so thick I could hear my own heartbeat. Dozens of eyes turned to me, but they all blurred. Only Marcus and Emma stood out. Marcus's face paled for a moment, then twisted into a greedy smile. His eyes gleamed with suspicion and excitement, as if he'd already touched the gold. "Sarah," Marcus said, voice shaky but eager, "are you serious? Or did you just lose it and blurt that out?" Emma was different. She leaned back in her chair, arms crossed, mocking smirk on her lips. "Oh, come on, Sarah. Another one of your attention-grabbing stunts. A treasure. Sounds like something out of a children's book." I didn't respond. My throat tightened, but my feet moved. I turned and left the diner in silence, ignoring the murmurs rising behind me. I had just revealed the biggest secret of my life, and I knew from this moment there was no going back. Marcus, with his insatiable greed, would surely pursue it to the end. Emma, with her cold pretense, would find a way to exploit it to the fullest. The door swung open. I stepped outside. The biting wind stung my skin, and snow fell heavily on the road, as weighty as the gaze of Mother Earth. Everything seemed to be watching, waiting to see which path I would choose next. Just a few days after the memorial, the real storm began. Marcus didn't waste any time. The morning after, as I sat in my small apartment, trying to sort through my chaotic thoughts, a letter was slipped under the door. I opened it, and cold words of a law firm hit me like a slap. Marcus had filed a lawsuit against me, accusing me of concealing family inheritance assets. The legal claim stated that the treasure map, the one I found in the cabin, was part of the Nanook family legacy, and that I, Sarah, was intentionally trying to keep it for myself. I read it over and over, heart pounding, not from fear but from rage that flared like wildfire. My brother, the one who once held my hand as a child, who giggled when I fixed his bicycle, was now dragging me to court, as if we had never been family. But Marcus didn't stop at lawsuits. He was busy spreading rumors like toxic winds sweeping through Anchorage. I heard from Aunt Linda that Marcus had been going around, from high society parties to family gatherings, telling anyone who would listen that I was a selfish woman hiding a $500 million treasure, the legacy of the entire Nanook clan. "Sarah thinks she can keep it all to herself," he'd say, voice dripping with feigned indignation, as if he were the one betrayed. "She's not thinking of the family, not thinking of Mom and Dad." His words spread like fire through a dry forest, and soon it seemed the entire city had heard about Sarah's treasure. Distant relatives began circling like vultures smelling blood. Uncle Robert, a man I'd only met a handful of times in my life, called me one evening, voice as sweet as honey. "Sarah, how you holding up? Heard you found something pretty interesting in your parents' cabin, huh?" he asked, as if we were old pals. "Families got to stick together, Sarah. If there's something valuable, you should share it with everyone, right? Don't let people think you're selfish." I gripped the phone, trying to keep my voice steady. "Uncle, I'm not keeping anything. It's just a map, and I haven't done anything with it." But Robert wouldn't let up. He laughed loudly, as if I just told a joke. "Don't play coy with me, Sarah. If you don't share, people won't be happy. You don't want the whole clan turning their backs on you, do you?" His threat cut like a knife, but it wasn't the only one. Others, distant relatives, old friends, even people I'd never met, started reaching out. A far-removed aunt texted me, suggesting I share the map's information for resource extraction, promising to split the profits. An old neighbor stopped by the diner, clapped me on the shoulder, and said, "Sarah, do the right thing. Don't let people think you're greedy." I looked at them, faces that were once familiar, now twisted by greed. I wanted to scream that I wasn't planning to take anything, that I just wanted to honor my parents' wishes to protect Mother Earth. But I knew they wouldn't understand. To them, I was no longer Sarah, the woman raised in the woods who respected land and sky. I was just the girl holding a treasure they wanted a piece of. The tabloid media jumped in like sharks smelling blood. One morning, as I opened the local paper, a sensational headline screamed, "Alaska woman hoards $500 million family treasure." The article was riddled with fabrications, calling me a selfish daughter and a disloyal heir, trying to steal the legacy from my brother and family. Reporters began loitering outside the diner, cameras flashing every time I stepped out. "Sarah, what can you tell us about the treasure map?" one shouted, thrusting a microphone in my face. What are you going to do with $500 million? I didn't answer, just kept my head down and pushed past them, but it felt like I was being hunted. Every step I took, I could feel the city's eyes on me as if I were a criminal. Worse still, the cabin in Fairbanks, the place where I grew up, where memories of my parents lived, became the center of morbid curiosity. A friend from Fairbanks called to warn me that locals had started showing up, lurking around the property, some even sneaking in to search for the treasure. I drove there the next day, and the sight before me broke my heart. The wooden fence was torn down, windows smashed, the yard littered with haphazardly dug holes. The cabin, though already dilapidated, had been sacred to me. Now it was violated, as if Mother Earth herself had been insulted. I stood in the yard, snow falling silently, and it felt like the land was weeping with me. Emma, of course, didn't stay out of it. One evening, she appeared at my apartment door, wearing an expensive fur coat, eyes soft like they used to be. "Sarah," she said, voice so sweet it sent chills down my spine. "I'm sorry for what happened. I was wrong. You're not a failure. You have that map. We could do something big together." I looked at her, feeling like I was staring at a stranger. She hadn't come back because she loved me or understood me. She came back for the $500 million, for the glamour she thought I could now provide. "Get out," I said, voice cold as ice. "I don't need you, and I don't need your lies." Emma froze, lips tightening, but then she turned and walked away, leaving me with heavy loneliness. I was cornered like a beast, surrounded by wolves. Alone, I had to face Marcus's greed, Emma's deceit, and relentless scrutiny and harassment from relatives, acquaintances, and the media. Each day, the pressure grew heavier, like an unending blizzard. I began wondering if I was wrong, if I should just give up the map, share it with everyone, and live the big life they wanted. But every time that thought crossed my mind, I heard Father's voice. "The land is our mother, and you must protect her." I clutched the map hidden in the drawer, and told myself I wouldn't betray my parents' legacy, no matter the cost. The tension escalated to a breaking point, and I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff with no way out. But I didn't know that just when everything seemed lost, a greater truth was waiting, ready to reveal the final answer. 2 months later, the inheritance dispute between my brother and me officially began. That day, the Anchorage sky was cloaked in heavy gray, as if nature itself was growling at the storm about to erupt. I stepped into the courtroom, heart aching, feeling like a trapped animal surrounded by cold stares of lawyers, the sternness of the judge, and curious gazes of strangers there to watch the drama unfold. Marcus sat across from me, eyes sharp and cold, the corner of his mouth curling into a confident smirk, as if victory was already in his grasp. Beside him, Emma was dressed in a dazzling gown, but her eyes avoided mine, the woman she once called her love. I clenched my rough hands inside Father's old jacket, breathing heavily as I tried to stay calm. Deep down, I wanted to scream that I didn't care about money, that all I wanted was to protect my parents' legacy. But I knew in this room, no one truly cared. The judge, a middle-aged man with a deep, stern voice, banged his gavel to start the proceedings. Marcus's lawyer stood, voice sharp and accusing, alleging that I had hidden the map, a shared asset of the Nanook family, and demanded that the court force me to surrender it for equal division. "Sarah Nanook has deliberately tried to monopolize an inheritance worth $500 million, he declared. "She has not only betrayed her brother, but also the family and the values her parents left behind." His words were like daggers, slicing deep into my pride. I wanted to stand up, to say that I never intended to keep anything for myself, that I only wanted to preserve Mother Earth. But my lawyer, a court-appointed one, told me to stay quiet, that he would handle the rest. I looked at Marcus and saw him smiling, that same triumphant grin from the day Attorney Wilson read the will. Emma held his hand, eyes sparkling with pride, but I knew it wasn't for Marcus. It was for the $1 million mansion and the glamour she thought he brought. I bowed my head, trying to focus on Father's words. "True value lies not in what you take, but in what you keep." But in this room, surrounded by greedy stares and accusations, I felt like I was losing, as if everything I believed in was meaningless. Then, just as the judge was about to ask me his first question, the courtroom door swung open. A cold gust of wind rushed in, accompanied by murmurs from those present. I looked up, and my heart stopped. Standing in the doorway, with a familiarity that hurt, were my parents, Samuel Nanook and Grace Nanook. My father, tall and sturdy with his black hair tied back and eyes sharp as a blade. My mother, gentle with her golden hair and warm smile, though her eyes now carried a hint of sternness. The courtroom was stunned, gasps turning to shocked whispers, before falling silent as my father stepped forward, his deep voice resonating through the room. "We're not dead, and we have something to say." I sat there, unable to believe my eyes. Marcus jumped up, face pale, mouth agape, as if he'd seen a ghost. Emma gripped his hand tightly, eyes filled with panic, as if she knew everything was about to collapse. The judge banged his gavel, calling for order, but even he couldn't hide his astonishment. "Mr. and Mrs. Nanook," he said, voice slightly trembling. "Please explain. Can you imagine discovering that everything you've been through, the pain, the betrayal, the loneliness was actually a test?" My father stepped up to the stand, mother beside him, her hand gently resting on his shoulder. "Everything you've seen, the plane crash, the will, the map, was a test," father began, voice steady like when he taught me about Mother Earth. "We wanted to see which of our two children was worthy of inheriting our ancestors' legacy. Not money, not land, but the values we've spent our lives protecting." He looked at me, then at Marcus, gaze sharp but not judgmental. "We faked our disappearance to see what you would do when faced with temptation." The courtroom seemed to hold its breath. My head spun, as if the ground beneath me was shaking. Marcus shook his head, stammering, "Dad, Mom, what kind of joke is this? I inherited the mansion, the assets. The lawyer said so." Attorney Wilson, who had been sitting in the corner, stood up, voice calm but clear. "That will was fake, Marcus," he said. "At your parents' request, I presented a fabricated will to test you and your sister. The beachfront mansion in Miami, the liquid assets, they all still belong to Mr. and Mrs. Nanook." Marcus was stunned, as if he'd been slapped. Emma let go of his hand, eyes frantic, darting from Marcus to me, then to my parents. I sat there, heart pounding, not from joy, but from realization, but the biggest revelation was yet to come. My father continued, voice low but powerful. "The map Sarah found was also fake. Another test. The symbols and information on it were entirely fabricated. If Sarah had let greed cloud her judgment, if she had tried to sell those secrets, she would have gained nothing and lost everything." He looked directly at me, eyes filled with pride, but Sarah chose to stay silent, to keep the secret and honor Mother Earth, just as I taught her. Then he turned to Marcus, expression sad but not angry. "But you, Marcus, you let greed guide you. You sued your sister, spread rumors and treated money as everything. You are not worthy of the Nanook name." Marcus bowed his head, unable to speak. Emma, pale as ghost, stood up and stepped toward me. "Sarah," she whispered, voice trembling, "I was wrong. I shouldn't have left you. We can start over, right?" I looked at her, eyes now pleading, but all I saw was deceit. "No, Emma," I said, voice cold as ice. "You chose Marcus for money, and now you're coming back for money. I don't need you." Emma stood there humiliated, then burst into tears. Meanwhile, the judge, still in shock, declared the lawsuit dismissed. My parents approached me, and Mother hugged me tightly, tears streaming down her cheeks. "You did the right thing, Sarah," she whispered. "You're the daughter we've always been proud of." Marcus, now empty-handed, fell to his knees before our parents in the courtroom. "I'm sorry," he said, voice choked with sobs. "I was wrong. Please give me a chance." Father looked at him, gaze stern but not unforgiving. "You'll have a chance, Marcus, but you must prove yourself worthy. Live a year in the forest as I did, and learn to respect Mother Earth. If you can do that, you'll have what you deserve." Marcus nodded, tears streaming down his face, and I saw in him a glimpse of the little boy who used to hold my hand years ago. That evening, in the wooden cabin in Fairbanks, I sat with my parents for the first time since those agonizing months when I thought I'd lost them forever. They told me their story, how they survived the plane crash, how they built shelters and waited, testing us from afar. "You are our pride," Mother said, eyes glistening with tears. "When you were young, I watched you chop firewood, wade into rivers to catch fish, and I knew you were stronger than anyone. Not because you were bigger or stronger, but because you had the heart of Mother Earth, honest, resilient, and never betraying what your father taught you. Father handed me a small wooden box, intricately carved with Inuit patterns. This is the real map, he said. You have full authority over it. To exploit it or preserve it, the choice is yours. But I trust you'll do the right thing, as you always have. I took the box, hands trembling, feeling as if I were holding the entire legacy of our ancestors. Inside was a different map, drawn on animal hide, its lines meticulously detailed. I'll keep it, I said, voice steady. I'll protect it as you have, as our ancestors have. Mother came closer, hugging me tightly. Father placed his hand on my shoulder, gaze steadfast but filled with love. And now, in the old wooden cabin, amid crackling fire and warm voices of my parents, I suddenly understood, true value doesn't lie in money, in mansions or in treasures. It lies in character, in how we protect our legacy, in how we live true to our beliefs. I gripped the real map tightly, knowing with certainty that I would never exploit it. I would preserve it as my parents had, as our ancestors had, so that Mother Earth would remain Mother Earth forever. Sometimes the greatest inheritance isn't what fills your bank account, it's what fills your heart. If this story moved you, if you believe that true strength comes from character not cash, then smash that like button right now.